Thanks for having me here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Holston, obviously, and I'm the Director of Online Communications and Marketing and Communications. Previous to working at Georgia Tech, I've only been here for about 4 months. Previous to that, I was at the University of Texas at Austin, where I was Director of Strategic Design Management.
Can you speak a little louder?
A little louder? Do I need a... I can do the mic. But I might break into song. That's right. Prior to being at Georgia Tech, I was at the University of Texas at Austin, where I was the Director of Strategic Design Management. So my group managed all the print and web collateral for the university. We worked with all the colleges, all the units, and the VP portfolios as well. So we were a team of developers, designers, writers, researchers, and so we've had a pretty big hand in a lot of the way that people are communicating online there, and both in social media, on the web, and even in news releases and things like that. So I'm glad to be here at Georgia Tech. There's a lot of opportunity here. We're going into a web redesign in the next few months, so that'll be exciting. Looking forward to probably working with a few of you on that. Sort of as a good seg, today we're going to talk about SEO and conversion, which is related to obviously the web. Sorry. Hopefully that'll be good. How many people are familiar with what SEO is? All right. For anybody who doesn't know what SEO is, it stands for search engine optimization, and it's essentially it's the way that you can improve your site so that they're more visible to search. And conversion is about, once you get people onto your sites, how do you get them to do stuff that you want them to do, whether it's, post a comment, download a white paper, have some sort of action, some sort of behavior. So these two things, SEO and conversion, they kind of flow through all of our online communications. Again, everything from our web pages to our press releases to our social media properties. It cuts across all those. It even impacts our print to a degree. So it's an interesting topic. I'll state right now, I'm not going to get into a lot of technical stuff. I'm not going to talk about a lot of tools and things like that. I'm going to give some overview of what this is about. You'll definitely walk away with here with a better knowledge of how to use SEO in your sort of when you're developing content and things like that in your design. So hopefully this will be really beneficial. How many people are actually producing content for the web right now? Any writers, right? So that's a huge part of where SEO comes into play. Today I'll give an overview of SEO. We'll talk about keywords. We'll talk about keyword research. How do you find keywords to use in your content? We'll talk about doing link building, which is another aspect of SEO. Link building is essentially getting other websites to link back to your sites. That's something that the search engines really love. And we'll also talk about conversion. Again, once we get people to the site, how do we get them to do things that we want them to do? And basically we'll look at goals. We'll talk about personas, which is essentially about understanding your audiences in a way that's sort of meaningful for them, how they interact on the web. We'll talk about developing landing pages and also testing. Testing is probably the most important part of this entire process, and it's the thing that gets done least. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Part of the reason that we're interested in SEO and conversion, it has a lot to do with the way that things have changed in the last few years. Has anybody worked in advertising or public relations prior to the computer? Prior to email? Okay, I guess I'm the only one. So way back when, you used to have to do things like, if you had press releases and things like that, you would have to fax them out to the various publications. I remember when I worked at General Electric, faxing, sending out, copied press releases out to like Jane's Defense Weekly and things like that. And that was the way that you got your message out back then. The other way was hiring an ad agency to get your message out. Those were really the only two channels that you had. And they were both they had their challenges. Advertising was very expensive. If you didn't have a budget to advertise, you're pretty limited in how you get your message out to people you're trying to connect with. It was, it's sort of, advertising sort of had this old model to it where, it was sort of one-sided communication. It was very sort of promotional kind of tact. And media had challenges as well where, again, the only way you would get your story out is if you had a good relationship with an editor or a writer or a journalist, and hopefully they would pick up your story. It was kind of, you post it and you pray that it works. So that old model has gone away. We still need agencies for various things, and we certainly need to be partners with the media. But a lot of the onus for getting our message out is now on us. And that's fine because we control the channel for communication right now. And we can reach our audiences directly. We know who they are. We know what their interests are. We know they have a connection with us already. A lot of our alumni, students, faculty, staff are already here, donors. They all have some sort of connection to us. So in that regard, it's we know who these people are and we know how to reach out to them, and we have the capability of doing it ourselves. So part of, as we have this responsibility of communicating for ourselves now, a lot of it has to do with content. And that's why I asked about folks who are generating content, because you've probably heard this before, that content is king on the web. And and from a search perspective, from a reputational perspective, from a thought leadership perspective, our content is key. And the ability for us to get our content out to the right people is critical. And I've got this thing, we need to start thinking like a publisher, as opposed to an old model of thinking like an organization. We need to be able to deliver content out to people in formats that they want it in, for tablet, for mobile, for web, however they want it, and format it in a way that's meaningful to them. So again, we need to sort of change the way that we're thinking about things. And again, we need to think about how we're delivering our messages too, that we're not just sending out press releases to folks and they're going to kind of interpret that. We need to be interpreting it ourselves for again, our audiences, and we have various audiences that we're going after. So we need to make sure we're tailoring our content to speak to their various needs. Another thing that we need to be thinking about is the mix of original content and curated content. And again, content is going to be the driver for positioning on the web. The way that you're going to build your reputation online is through the quality of your content. So a lot of people are generating their own content right now. We have lots of writers. People are writing about Georgia Tech. We have lots of stories. We've got stories in the media. Another approach that's sort of on the horizon that we have to be thinking about is curated content, that we're not only writing our own content, but we start to pull in content around the topics that we're writing about from other sources and bringing them together. And again, the reason we should be thinking about this is because as other organizations start doing that, they're going to have more authority on the web, and they're going to rise up in the search engines. When people start to look for content, they're going to go to those sites first because they have more content related to that particular topic. So again, it's something that we need to be thinking about because ranking well on the web is a competitive endeavor. If we're talking about thought leadership, one of the things I know you can't read this, it's a bit of an eye chart, but this is a study that a consulting group did about how do you convey thought leadership. And if we look at the chart here, things like marketing events, presentations, webinars, one of the top ones that they call out is search engine optimization. The reason is because most of the people that are going to get in touch with us are going to find us on the web. So we need to make sure that our content and our sites are optimized for search. If we're on page 2, page 3 of a web search, no one's going to find us. There's going to be other people ahead of us that they're going to go to. Obviously, if people are looking specifically for Georgia Tech content, they're going to find it because they know exactly where they're going. But if they're looking for something like bioscience or nanotech research, well, there are a lot of people competing in that realm. And again, from a reputational standpoint, from a content promotional standpoint, we need to make sure that we're up in search and we're making our offerings prominent to them. So again, the goal here is twofold. It's attract people to the content. How do we get people to our content? And then once they get there, how do we get them to do stuff? That's the second part of the equation. So again, search engine optimization is all about attracting people and getting people to your site, And then conversion is about, once they get there, making sure that they're finding what they need and getting them through a funnel so that they're doing the things that we need them to do. So, and from a communications and marketing standpoint, this is our vision and mission statement for our organization. So there are three key things here that are, again, directly related to search and conversion. And it's about promoting understanding, inspiring support, and forging mutually beneficial relationships. So if we think about that, how do we break that down? When we think about creating understanding, well, the way that we create understanding, again, is by getting people to read about what we're doing and to communicate out to them and for them to see what we're doing. And a lot of that, again, happens online. So again, we need to be making great strides to make our content not only accessible, but relevant to what they're looking for. If we think about how do we inspire support, well, we do that on the web by providing value. Again, if we can get our valuable content out to them and provide it to them in a way that's meaningful, that's value, and that inspires support. And again, the final thing is mutually beneficial relationships, and that really speaks of engagement. Relationships are two-way, they're reciprocal, and so people are coming to our site, we need to give them something to get them to come back, and again, that sort of forges the relationship. So all these things, these three things are very similar to a model that you would use sort of maybe outside of higher ed for more commercial web presence, and it's this sort of online trinity of relevance, value, and call to action. So those three things, understanding, again, relevance is communicated by us communicating out our message and people seeing what we do and they understand how we impact their lives. Value, again, is communicated by us doing that and then expressing in some way how we impact their lives and the value that we bring to it. And then calls to action, how do we ask them to engage with us? So this is sort of a general model that's used out in the world. So again, SEO and conversion are really kind of at the heart of a lot of communication strategy. And when we think about communication, we're not trying to talk to everybody. We're trying to talk to people who are interested in what we're doing. So that's another key aspect of SEO, that it's very much about relevance. And I'm going to say the word relevance about 60 times today, so you'll get sick of it. But that's a really key theme here. It's a key theme that runs through both SEO and conversion. So again, and once folks get to the page, we need to make sure that we're meeting their need, that they're coming to us with some intent. They're asking a question in search, they get to our page, and we need to be able to respond to that in a way that's meaningful to them. So, sort of along that line, it's sort of another key word here is empathy, is sort of understanding what people need. And this is, you've probably seen this cartoon before, this little chart. It's, it's sort of how we perceive what people want and what they really want. And a lot of times we make big assumptions about what we think people want from our various sites or our various communications. So again, it's just sort of a reminder that, we need to take a more empathic approach to how we plan our communications and think about our communications. So that is a long introduction. So now I want to talk specifically about sort of the various aspects of search engine optimization. So again, search engine optimization is essentially, it's the process of making websites or pages more visible to search engines, right? And we could say that the ultimate goal is to rank high in search. The reason that we want to rank high in search, well, let me sort of clarify some terminology here too. So when we talk about rank, we're talking about the actual number that you show up on the Google search. So if you're 1 or 10, position is the page that you're on. So you can click through multiple pages in search. That's your position. And then of course everybody wants to be on the front page listing of search. And the reason that that's important is because that's where people find you. If you're on the second or third page of a Google search, people either typed in the wrong thing or something that wasn't relevant to you, or you're not competing well, and again, they're not going to find your offering. So again, people up here, they're getting the majority of the clicks. So if you're getting 35% of the clicks are just the first listing, 12 for the second, 9 for the third, 2 for the 10th, and after that you're pretty much invisible. No one's going to click to the second page. So again, this is a competitive thing that we need to be thinking about. If we have key areas that we want to be known for, key reputational areas, key ideas that we want to be known for, we need to be just doing due diligence with the way that we're planning our communications and integrating keywords into our communications and promoting our content. Otherwise, people are going to have a hard time finding it. So just a little background too, without getting overly technical about the search engines and how they work. It's an algorithm, and if we look at Google search, they spend a lot of time refining the search engines. The search engines are constantly changing, the criteria always changing. They have hundreds of criteria that they're using to determine what searches are effective. And again, their goal here is, they're trying to make things, every search, more and more relevant. So they're constantly refining the data to find out how they can do that. And again, that speaks to search engine optimization. The things that we know about how the algorithms work, we need to use those in our favor so that we're ranking high in search. Again, they're constantly making updates. They just made one maybe a month or so ago. They upgraded the infrastructure, and now it's even faster, and they're considering all sorts of new things. Like now they consider social media as a criteria for ranking in search. And they're also trying to make it so that the latest, greatest content comes up higher before older content. So they're constantly moving it around. So it's a bit of a moving target. But there are things that we do know about the search engines that we can use in our favor. And there are two areas. There's on-page and off-page factors. So if we look at what on-page are, these are things that we control, sort of in our web page, our content, keywords, calls to action. And again, I just want to reiterate, the quality of content is key. Search engine optimization and conversion is less about technical stuff than it is about having really good content and promoting it well. It's about, without having that really quality content, then you might be able to get people to go to your page, but they're going to bounce immediately if you don't have anything there that's meaningful to them. So the focus of this has a lot to do with how we write, the language that we use, how we design. These are all things that play into help the search engines find our content. And these are things that we control. Even things like the back end of the site, like if we think about the coding that goes along with it, there's the HTML, the title tags, the meta descriptions. Those are all things that we can plan for and plan around to again, help promote the site. Architecture as well, the way that the site is configured, plays an impact. The search engines want to be able to scroll through this stuff pretty quickly, so if we have bulky architectures or odd architectures, they don't like that. They want to be able to go through it quickly and find content. So these are all things that we sort of control, and this is sort of a big part of what SEO is about. The second part has a lot to do with, and we call it off-page because it's things that sort of out of our control. One of the big things that the search engines love are links. They like internal links, but the thing they like most is links from outside sites coming to your site. And they rank those very high. They give those a lot of weight when they're in the algorithm. So those are things that we need to be looking at. And they don't just look for the volume of links. We could get 1 million links on our page, and that would be okay. But what they really look for is the quality of the link. And again, they define quality as, if we get something from the Huffington Post and they're linking back to our site, that's a quality link. It's a firm that has a big reputation. They're a big online firm. They get a lot of traffic. They're well known. It's like they're a popular kid that likes us, and that helps us move up. And again, it's sort of all this goes back to this idea of building reputation, and we're building reputation in the eyes of the search engines. So things that the search engines like are also things that we like. They're things we want popular sites, the New York Times. We want CNN. We want all those folks to link back to us. Again, because by doing that, they're elevating our presence and our authority on the web. Now, let's see here. So there's two types of SEO. There's white hat and there's black hat. So white hat is obviously stuff that is legal that you can do, and you will not offend the search engines. And then there's black hat, which is where you're kind of gaming the system. And there are a lot of people that spend a lot of time thinking about how can they trick the search engines to rank their content higher. And again, think of all the people that have businesses that are based online. They will do anything they can to get high in the search because they know they're going to get a good return if they can get on that front page. So again, people will spend a lot of time doing things like keyword jamming and putting hidden text in there and just, a lot of little odds and ends that they can do in the back end of their site to help it come up. But again, if they get caught for that, they get booted off. So it's a little bit of a risk. For what we're interested in and sort of for our purposes, we don't obviously need to worry about that. The things that we have in our favor, being an EDU is number one. That gets weighed very heavily by search. Our reputation, we're nationally, internationally known organization. People already know who Georgia Tech is. We're not some small college somewhere. So we have, and people want to link to us. So we've already got a lot of things in our favor here. But let me show you an example. For this presentation, I did a search on nanotechnology research. So I wanted to see where we ranked for nanotechnology research and sort of who was ahead of us. And this was actually the first page that came up. And this is the Center for Responsible Nanotechnology Research. And they're number one for nanotechnology research on Google. So I'm looking at this page and I'm going, this is kind of not a greatly designed page. And I'm kind of reading this content and it's a little horsey. I'm kind of wondering about why these guys are number one. I've never heard of this organization. I can't find them anywhere else on the web. So I look at their source code, and you can see what they're doing here. If you look at this, they're repeating the word nanotechnology like 50 times here. And then they're repeating the word science a couple times, and research a couple times, and technology, and engineering, and nano. So what they're doing here is they're doing what's called keyword stuffing. You can't see this on the page, but you can see it in the code. The search engines don't see the page. This is what they see, and this is what they're reading. So the search engine is looking at this going, oh, well, this must be a really important nanotechnology page because they have the word nanotechnology written on it 50 times. So people are trying to game the system here. And I took another look at it, and I scrolled down, and now I'm looking at it, and I'm going, okay, this is, so I don't know if you can read this, but these are links to, what do we got here? Viagra, like buy Canadian Viagra from Pfizer, and buy Cialis and stuff like that. So they've got all these links to ads for Viagra. So they're obviously, there's something going on with this site. They're manipulating the linking. They're using cloaking to get the site up in search. So these are the kind of things that folks will do to kind of get up ahead of the search rankings. And it's just kind of crazy. It's obviously Viagra has nothing to do with nanotechnology. So, unless you have a really bad problem and you're at the nanotech level, then. So CEO. So SEO is made up of these two parts. It's made up of keyword optimization and link building. So again, and these things impact all of our communication. So our email, our print material. Obviously things that we do on the web, our press releases, we want to use keywords throughout these communication channels, and we want to use them consistently. So whenever we're talking about our nanotech endeavors, we want to make sure we say nanotechnology as opposed to nanotech, and we want to make sure that we say, if we're using key phrases, that we use those consistently, that it's Nanotechnology Research Center as opposed to Center for Nanotechnology Research. So again, it's sort of the consistency of the language that they're using. And again, if we do that, then that's something that the search engines like and they respond to. So again, it's all about relevance. It's all about putting these relevant words and these phrases in your content. So how do you find these phrases and words? Well, keyword research is pretty straightforward, actually. There's no magic to this. In fact, a lot of this stuff is common sense. SEO and optimization sound very complicated, but they're really not. They're really fairly straightforward, and a lot of it we already do. So if we think about what keyword research is, we're just brainstorming words around topics that we're interested in. So, we'll use nanotechnology as our example today. We'll look at how we can sort of find words that are related to that we can use in search. And, we want to look at what our competitors or our peers are doing. What words are they using in search? And then we want to come up with phrases. Once we have those keywords, we dump it into our site in the back end. We want to make sure they're in our meta tags, title, in our HTML code. and then we want to bring them into our content and make sure that they appear there. So we're kind of spreading this out across the board and making sure that we're consistent with our language. So just sort of the goal, and I just sort of reiterate, the goal here it's not that we're trying to drive traffic to the site, it's that we're trying to drive qualified traffic to the site. And that's a key idea behind keywords, is that when we're developing keywords and we're doing keyword research, we're looking for words that real people use to find what we offer. So we don't want to use, if we have sort of something we're trying to communicate out to the public, we don't want to use a lot of sort of internal language for it. We want to call it something that would make sense to someone on the outside, someone that we're trying to reach out to. So that's a big consideration. We can get a gazillion hits to our website, but if 80% of them bounce, then we haven't accounted for, we haven't gotten anything out of it. In fact, we've lowered ourselves in search by doing that. So the goal here is to find words that are meaningful to the people that we're trying to connect to, things that they would use to find our content, and making sure we're reflecting that back in the way that we're communicating to them. So the first step in keyword research is to just write. If you're writing content, then you should just write your content as you would for your audience. The rule is we write for people first, and we write for search engines second. So again, you don't have to do anything initially. Just sort of get your content together, think about what you're going to write, make sure it's meaningful to people. Because again, we can write for the search engines. We can jam it full of keywords and come up with sort of awkward phrases that might work really well for a search engine. But if it doesn't resonate with people, then again, they're going to leave. They're not going to stay on the page. They're going to go. They're not going to find any value in it, and that would defeat the purpose. So again, it's always about people first, search engines second. And this is just a quick little framework for how you can brainstorm for keywords. So you just make a list of, if we use nanotechnology, think of all the words that are related to nanotechnology, nanoscience, nanotech. If we think about, some people write nanotech, some people write nanotech together. Think of all those variations of the word, and we want to start creating a list of those. And then we can do that for qualifiers. So nanotechnology researcher, nanotechnology uses for nanotechnology, impact of nanotechnology. We can start pairing these up and making different combinations. We can bring in sort of words that aren't maybe directly related to nanotech, but sort of speak to the category, so science, technology, things like that. And we start to make a list and start combining these words together. And these are possibilities of words that people might be using to find our content. So once we have that list, that's your starting list. And then you really just have to go through it and say, I think this one is relevant. I think this one is going to be relevant. It's just sort of a good brainstorming activity. And you can always go into Google AdWords. Google AdWords is, if you go into Google Analytics, do people have access to Google Analytics? Anybody? A few folks? Yeah. If you have your Google Analytics account, you can go into AdWords. In fact, I don't even think you need an account. You can go into AdWords and it's free. And you can just type in your phrase. So up here I typed in, we've got nanotechnology research, and I put in our website and clicked it, and it'll start to give you all variations of what people are searching for nanotechnology. And it'll tell you how competitive it is. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be looking for or trying to be ranking for is very low. There's not a lot of competition for it out on the general market. We certainly have competition from our peers, but not a ton of people are looking for nanotechnology research centers. And it'll also give you sort of a monthly estimate of how many times people have searched for that in the month. So it's a good tool to have, and it's free. It's pretty straightforward. So again, this will just sort of help you as you're thinking about what words you're going to use in your content and how you want to use phrases and things like that, sort of give you some guidelines for how you want to do that. So, again, these keywords, they permeate your site. They're everywhere. They're in your title tags. They're in your URL. We put them in our headings. We have them in our navigation. We have them in our content. And that's good, because what we're trying to do here, again, is if somebody's done a search for nanotechnology research, and then they come to a page and they can't find the word nanotechnology research somewhere, they're going to bolt. They're going to leave because they think that they've lost the scent. The thing that they were looking for isn't there. So even repeating things in the header of an article is valuable. The search engines don't care about this, but people do. When they see this sort of validates their search and lets them know they're in the right place. So with keywords and in content and how you use them in content, there are really sort of 4 dimensions of how to use keywords in content. And they're relevance, proximity, placement, and density. So these are all how the keywords fit into the content of the site. So things like relevance, again, how the keywords that you're using, how relevant are they to the search that the person has done? So that's something you want to check for. Content and placement, where are the keywords located on the page? The search engines like them higher up. They want to see them, in navigation. They want to see them, the first, second, third word in a paragraph. It's very much like, if you've ever done any journalism, it's the inverted pyramid kind of model where you want to get some of that key stuff up front as quickly as you can and then kind of hone down to sort of the lesser important stuff. So it's similar to that. Again, placement in the title tags, the descriptions in the back end is also very critical. Proximity, this is sort of a nuance, but the search engines like it when the words are close together. So if you have a phrase like keyword research centers, you want to make sure that those are all together. If that's what you're ranking for and that's what you're trying to rank high for, you want to keep them together as much as you can. If you start breaking them up with like the Center for Nanotechnology Research, that's sort of, again, it's a nuance, but the search engines don't like it as much, so it won't get you as much value out of that. Density is another one. It's pretty basic. It's the number of keywords used in the content. So it's the number of times you used a keyword divided by the total number of words in your content. So this is sort of in flux. Some people say this is really important, and other people say it's not that important. Again, it's hard to tell because we don't know how the search engines are configured. We know some basic things. We think this works. So again, having the keywords in your content, written in a natural way, again, not forcing them in, could benefit you in search. And again, if you overdo it, like 5% density is a good limit. So if you try to jam keywords in there, the search engines will look at it and they'll go, oh, this guy's, he's trying to game the system, so we're going to yank his stuff. So you don't want to overdo it. One other aspect about keyword research, we tend to think that we want to rank for really big stuff, like if we use our nanotechnology model, we could probably rank for just the word nanotechnology, but very few people do a search just on nanotechnology. They're usually doing what we would call long tail search, and that means they're looking for sort of more descriptive searches for, or more detailed searches for something about nanotechnology. So it could be, what is nanotechnology, or nanotechnology research centers in the South, or nanotechnology and nanoscience faculty, or something like that. So, this area they call the long tail of search, even though it doesn't, it's not way up here, but you get a lot more volume here by having your pages optimized for a lot of little pages that speak to these various needs of people here. We're kind of in a position, which is really good, that we probably could rank really high for nanotechnology because we're a .edu, we're nationally known, and we have some presence in this area. So we kind of have the best of both worlds in this. But again, a lot of people aren't searching just for that one word. They're looking for something particular about nanotechnology. And again, that's the thing that we need to be looking at, is how do we find out what they're looking for, and how do we craft language to match their searches so that they find it easier. So I'll go through some of the sort of the internal stuff of the pages and how you use the title tags in various areas and places where it's important for the search engines to see. So title tags are probably the most important thing that the search engines look for. And the title tag is, it's just this little name up at the top of your page. That's the first thing that the search engines look for. This also appears in your Google search. So when you do a Google search, you'll get something like this. It'll have the title tag, the URL, and then the description. So again, it's something that the search engines weigh very heavily. They give it a lot of prominence, and it's a very simple thing to do. So you want to make sure that you're including keywords in your title tag as much as you can, and you can even make them descriptive. I think you have like 150 characters that you can use in your title tag. So you can say, Nanotechnology Research Centers at the Georgia Institute of Technology. You can really kind of have a sentence there if you wanted to. Actually, it's 65 characters, I'm sorry. But but you can still get a lot of content in there for that title tag. And again, that's helpful on a search engine basis, and it's helpful on a visitor basis, because somebody types in their request or their search, it comes up on the page, they're looking at it, they're reading it. You know, the more descriptive and the more keywords that sort of reflect what they've typed in, the more likely are they that they're going to click on it. Meta descriptions don't weigh as much in the search engines. In fact, they don't weigh at all anymore. But again, search isn't just about appeasing the search engines. It's about making sure you're reinforcing a message to the people that are coming to the page. So when somebody gets to this search, they can read about what it is that we're doing here. And this is almost like a call to action. You know, you can configure these so that you're saying, hey, we've got what you want. Come to our page and we'll give you more, you know, information or whatever. So they can be a little more, they're more descriptive. And again, it's not a bad thing to have the keywords in there, again, not for a search reason, but because it reinforces that you have what they're looking for. And this one has 150 characters, so you can write a little bit more with that. Anchor text, when you think about the pages, you know, we have a lot of links on our pages. A lot of times people will write, you know, click here or read more, and those are kind of useless to the search engines. They don't help the page move up in search. They don't help the viewer. They're not user-friendly. What's better is to write something that's meaningful. So this is a great example. He's got a link on this page. What is nanotechnology? So that's, if I'm going to that page, I know what I'm going to get when I click on that. I know I'm going to get a description of what nanotechnology is. Plus, he's got nanotechnology in that tag. Again, that's something that the search engines look for. They say, hey, look, there's nanotechnology tags. There's a link on this page that says nanotechnology. It must be an important nanotechnology page. So those are things that you need to look for and make sure that we work into our pages. Another aspect of on-page is alt tags. So again, you probably won't see most of this stuff because you'll just see the image. Maybe you'll see a description underneath it, but behind it there's an image alt tag. And again, these should be descriptive. This one says studying graphene doping, which is great. It describes what the photo is. If it says like JPEG, you know, like photo number 3 JPEG, that's meaningless. The search engines don't know what that is. People who are using screen readers will go to this and they won't know what that image is. That's something I'll talk about too, is how search engines and accessibility standards kind of overlap, and how they sort of benefit each other and the organization. So anyway, this is a good example of having a descriptive alt tag, and then in addition to that, having a description that people can see on the page that has keywords in it. Again, reinforcing the keywords. Keywords and URLs, they help click-through rate. Again, when somebody sees the keyword that they're looking for in the URL of the page that they've gone to, it's just another reinforcement that, yes, I'm at the right place. And again, search engines like it as well. Social media, I think I mentioned earlier, just recently they've been talking about having social media count as a criteria for rising in search. And again, they're going for, how do we know who's the most reputable, who has the most relevant and reputable offering when someone does a search for something? So they're looking at shares, tweets, you know, how many people are connected to you on Google+, things like that. That all feeds into the search engines as well, and again, helps your pages rise in search. So I mentioned about the alt tags and how you know, people using screen readers. Are people familiar with the 508 accessibility guidelines? Anybody know about that? Nobody? Anybody? Some people? Okay. So, right. So we have, because we're a state organization, we have to abide by 508 compliance. And 508 compliance is basically about, you know, making sure that our sites are designed in a way that people with, you know, who are sight impaired, or even people who are working on, you know, have modems or, you know, slow machines or outdated machines, that we're making our content accessible to a broad range of people. We're not excluding anybody because of a handicap or because of a technological issue. So the things that make up accessibility are the same things, sort of the guidelines that tell you what you need to do for accessibility match what you need to do for SEO in a lot of ways. So they kind of overlap, they complement each other. So that's a good thing. We can use both of these things and not only help people find our pages who might be visually impaired or have other issues, but we're also making them come up in search as well. And this sort of overlaps with usability too, just making the pages usable. And it's everything from, again, having sort of a logical progression of content along the page. So I don't know if you're familiar with like JAWS as a screen reader. So if you're visually impaired and you want to look at a website, you'd get on JAWS and it would read the site to you, and it reads the code, it reads the words that are in the code. And if it can, obviously it makes sense, it's more valuable if it reads those words in a logical order. And that's the way we ought to be thinking about how we're configuring our pages. So again, that helps with search engines as well, that helps with accessibility, and that helps with usability. So these three things kind of come together, and they're, it's due diligence. We ought to be thinking about all these things when we're designing. Just a couple quick keyword tools. I mentioned AdWords earlier. Again, a great tool for just sort of finding variations of keywords. Keyword Tracker is another good one. There's a paid version and then there's a free version. You can just get on the free version, type in free word tracker in Google, and you'll end up at this page. And you can just throw your query in there, and again, it'll start to give you some ideas of keywords you can use and how many times people have been searching for them. Okay, so that's SEO and keywords. So that's the first cornerstone in search engine. The second one is link building. And link building, again, the thing that the search engines like is they like to see, they want you to prove your reputation, and they want you to prove your authority. And one way that they do that is by looking at how other sites are linking back to you. So what it's telling the search engine is that our content is so good and it's so informative that people want to link to us, not just anybody, but highly reputable organizations, government organizations, EDUs, sort of nationally known media outlets, folks who are in that sort of category. If they're linking to our content, that tells the search engine that we're really important and our stuff will move up. So the process for doing this, again, is just sort of identifying. It's not unlike sort of just media relations. It's finding who's out there, who do we need to contact, who would we want to link to our content, determining if we need to, if we have someone we're not sure about, maybe there's like a blogger out there who's writing about nanotechnology, and we kind of want to see, would it be valuable to have this guy link to our stuff? He might have, 1 million people tuned into his blog, who knows? So we can do some analysis and look and see how many people are linked to him and sort of the value of his site, and determine whether or not we want to ask him to link to us. And then the final step is just making the ask. It's calling up whoever it is and saying, hey, we see that you're interested in our content. Would you mind giving us a link back? So again, they're linking back to our content from their site. So again, as we do this, it's called inbound linking. So it could be anywhere. It could be from social networks, our blogs, online articles, press releases. All that stuff should be linking back to preferably a landing page, a specific landing page. So, if we have if we're doing a landing page around nanotechnology research centers, that would be our landing page. All those elements, news, media, online articles, we'd want to make sure that they're all keyword rich with the word nanotechnology research center in them, and they're all linking back to us. So again, that helps us in search. It shows that we have a level of authority and topic relevance. And again, that's what the search engines are really interested in. So let me do a quick little comparison. So again, earlier in the week, or last week actually, I did a search for nanotechnology research centers. And sorry, this is kind of small, but you can see for that query, I think here's that #1 site that was all about Viagra. And then I think we're down here. We're in 8th position for nanotechnology research, which is really good. I mean, that's great. We're on the front page. But I wanted to kind of compare our page to, there's another page over here. I think it's this one, the EPA, the epa.gov.nanoscience. So they're ranking at #2. So let's kind of compare these two pages and just see how these elements help in search. So again, the EPA page is #2. We're number 8. All right, they're two good pages, lots of content, lots of links, lots of good stuff going on there. So let's see. I did a little research on the EPA page, and I was looking sort of at it, and trying to figure out what is it optimized for? What keywords are they using? And they're using the words EPA, nanotechnology, and research. That's almost mimics what I was searching for. I typed in nanotechnology research. That's why they came up at number 2. For our page, we're optimized for NRC, research, and Georgia Institute. Only one of those words was in my search query. Another thing that's problematic about this is that, this means absolutely nothing. NRC doesn't mean anything to anybody. It doesn't mean anything to a search engine. It probably doesn't mean much to anybody who's looking for nanotechnology research centers. So it's spelling out the whole name would be much more valuable here. Research is a good one. Georgia Institute is a good one. It's again sort of gives it some credibility. But again, having these pages optimized for the words that we're using to search for helps it come up in search. And again, it conveys relevance. If we look at the next level down, we look at the title tags. EPA is using nanotechnology research /ORD/US EPA, a very descriptive title tag. Again, this is something that the search engines weigh very heavily. Very clear. If I didn't know anything about this, I would know exactly what they did, right? Ours has some issues. It's home/NRC. Again, doesn't mean anything to anybody. Might mean something to someone internally, but it doesn't mean anything to the search engines, and it probably doesn't mean anything to anybody who's looking for nanotechnology research content. So a better tag name would have been Nanotechnology Research Centers /Georgia Tech. That would be meaningful to folks. Let's see, the URLs as well. They've got EPA has nanoscience in their URL. www.epa.gov/nanoscience. So they've got a keyword in their URL. And again, we have nrc/godtech.edu. So again, we're missing these opportunities. These are simple things that we could be doing and things that we can go back and fix as well. I did a search on links. The EPA site has 512 inbound links to it. And these are all coming from other government organizations, EDUs, reputable sites. So they're getting a lot of power from these inbound links. We have 174. That's pretty good. We're getting EDUs and .govs and other research facilities. So we're doing good. We could do more. We could get more people to link to our site. So again, it's all sort of a matter of these fine little details and making sure that they flow through our site to get the site to come up. And again, another reason is because it's competitive and it shifts. So if you see, I think we're like 8th here, or actually last week we were, was it 8 or 9? Yeah, it's 8. And then this came up, Center for Nanotechnology, which is that us? No, this was us. Anyway, so we stayed 8 here, and then we got bumped by our own group here, Nanotechnology, or Georgia Tech Institute of Technology, Nanoscience and Nanotechnology started showing up on search. And I don't know why. I think, was there a nano event or something, some event related to nanotechnology or? Yeah, so all of a sudden they appear on search ahead of us. So they're moving up and we're moving down. So again, just to show sort of the competitive nature of it, that it's always shifting and you need to be on top of it. All right, that's a lot of information. Yeah, we'll stare at the cue, yeah, stare at the cue puppy. Get a glass of water. Okay, so let's talk about conversion. Now that we've figured out how we're going to optimize our site for search, and we've got all our keywords figured out, and we've gone out and we've asked all the important folks for links back to our site. Now this is where we really need to be thinking. It's okay. Once we get them there, what are we going to do with them? What do we want them to do? What are we trying to achieve? And again, it sort of goes back to this idea of a conversion funnel that, we all, this could be applied to everything from online giving to, if you're a research center and you're trying to attract, graduate students to work in your research center, or if you just want people who are interested in whatever you're doing to download your white paper or whatever it is, any kind of action behavior, we kind of think about it in these terms of action, interest, desire, and they kind of break down into, attention is getting people's attention, letting them know that you exist, and we do that through search. Interest is created by relevance, that we're showing them that what we have is relevant to what their needs are. Desire is, we've got good content that we can provide value to them by, through our content. And then engagement, which is important, that we're not just sort of having them come to our site, read our stuff, and then leave. We want to get them to do something so we can start to have some sort of back and forth with them. And then finally, satisfaction. Ultimately, we want them to come back at some point. So these are sort of key things. I happened to run across this photo, and I love this movie. It's from Glenn Ross. So he's up there like, screaming at the salesman. Lots of profanity. So it's sort of a marketing, it's something that's been around in marketing for a while, and it's just sort of a framework for thinking about how you get people to buy, or the buying decision process. So as we think about conversion, it's about a number of things. Again, it's sort of showing relevance and getting people the content that they're interested in and getting them to do something. It's also about continuous improvement. A big part of conversion is testing your pages and make sure that they're working properly and making sure that they're converting correctly. So again, a lot of pages some pages don't have search or traffic problems. Like we get 500,000 people coming to our site every month, right? We've got a lot of traffic. The question we need to be asking ourselves is, well, what are we going to do with them once they get there, and how do we get them to do things that we want them to do? So again, it's sort of the essence of conversion. And again, the conversion process is very much like any other communication process. It's understanding who your audience is, figuring out what you want them to do, coming up with some designs and some approaches for communicating that to them. And then again, these last two, testing and measure, are the things that no one ever does, but it's probably the most important thing. And again, if anybody who's lived in the print world for a long time can appreciate, the thing that a lot of print designers have always wanted was a way to prove their value, that their work was important and that it was effective. And it was always very difficult to do that. Well, as we're converting over to web, we have all those tools available to us, and it's right there. They're easy to use, and we just need to start making it part of our general practice. It's just again, we can see whether things are working or not, and then we can change them if they're not to make sure that they're more effective. So this first step is, who's the audience? And it's sort of a general question that we always ask whenever you're doing communications. Who are we talking to? What are their needs? What do they like? We've got demographics, which are sort of flat. It's age, location, stuff like that. People are probably familiar with Myers-Briggs or Kiersey Bates. Even Hippocrates had 4 temperaments that he was looking at. It's kind of funny that all these sort of break down into 4. People have been trying to put people into 4 categories for like eternity, right? So here's one more that we'll add to the list. Oh. This is called a persona framework, and it's designed primarily for online communication, and it's not about who the people are. It's more about what do we want them to do, right? How do we get, why are they at the page, and what do we want them to do, right? So we're looking at this from sort of behavioral aspects. And it's, we have competitive types who make very quick decisions. They're very logical. They move fast. We have spontaneous people who are also quick, but they sort of rely more on sort of emotion to make decisions. Humanists, they're very deliberate, very conscientious in their approach. Methodicals, deliberate, logical. So they sort of work along these 2 axes. And this is a good framework for thinking about how people do things on the web. If we think about how a competitive person would want their content displayed to them on a website, they're business-like. They want results. They're interested in what you can do for them. They want this information fast, and they want options. That's very different than what a spontaneous person would want. They're going to go and find the prettiest picture and click on that, and they want some compelling headlines and things of that nature. So people look at sites in different ways, and we need to be thinking about the different personality types and how we accommodate them in the way that we're displaying content in our layouts and our design. Again, humanists are going to look at content a lot differently than a competitive person would. A methodical person is going to be, he's going to read that page twice. He's going to read everything on that and make sure he understands everything before he goes anywhere. And again, these are all, by providing content to people in a way that's meaningful for them, they feel more comfortable going to the next step or making the next step with us. This is an example of this is actually an independent study of that. This is Jacob Nielsen. He's a usability online guru guy, been around for a long time. He was doing some work with the Census Bureau. So he comes up and he says, well, we've done all this research, and there are 4 types of people that look at the web, right? So again, sort of reiterating this idea of there are 4 different sort of modes of looking at content on the web. So, if you look at these, very distinct, what would you say this person is? The size of the dots means the time that they stayed on that area, So this person is looking at everything, and they're staying and they're looking at stuff for a really long time. So I'm going to guess that this person has a methodical sort of personality. This person, a little more quicker, and they're focusing on this stuff here. So this type of personality is going to be looking at imagery, and they're going to be scanning the page really quickly. The competitives are way up top. They're looking at, as soon as they get to the page, they're going to read the top part, and they're going to scour that for whatever they're looking for before moving on. So again, these are real models. They're not just sort of fabrications. This is the way that people digest information. We have different ways. People have different ways of looking at content, and they want it delivered to them in different ways. A methodical person will sit and read an entire page of content. A spontaneous person will want 5 bullets to tell them exactly what they need to know so they can make a decision quickly. So again, those are all things that we need to consider as we're thinking about how we're displaying content and how we're writing for the web. So again, another aspect of personas, which is nice, is that as we're working in teams, we have writers, designers, programmers. We've got a lot of people with clients. Having a persona framework and developing a persona for a project helps bring alignment. It helps everybody understand who they're talking to, and we sort of have this idea of the person that we're trying to address. And here's an example of a typical persona. So it's, this guy is obviously a meticulous person. He's a business guy. We give this sort of narrative. We tell a little story about him, what his problem is, what he's trying to achieve. We'll put up points of resolution, is what we call it, and it's about what do we need to clarify for him so that he feels comfortable going to the next step. What are the questions that he's going to ask? So if he's a meticulous person, he's going to want to know what the fine print is. He's going to want to know, if he's going to want to know every detail we could possibly give him. So we need to be able to accommodate him so that again he can go on and either feel good about sharing our content or contacting us about whatever we're doing. So again, these are just sort of considerations for thinking about how we display content and based on a persona model. These are some more things. Conversion beacons, how do we get them to do an action? What kind of words do they need? What kind of words do we need to use to get them to move forward? Things like that. Oops. So, once we know who we're trying to talk to, the second step is what are we trying to achieve? And we use this. It's sort of a goal framework of thinking about objectives. We ask ourselves, why do we have this site in the first place? Why are we taking the time to build this site and figure out a reason for its existence? Then we want to think about goals. What are the strategies we're going to use? We talk about KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators, and that's just a fancy way of saying what are we measuring? What kind of things are we going to be measuring? And then we look at targets, and those are actual numbers that we want to be looking at, in our analytics and things like that. So an example would be, if you've got an event, you'd say, well, my objective is I want to increase attendance to the event. That's your objective. Your goal is we want to increase registrations on the web, online. That would be a goal that would feed into this. And then your KPIs could be, the number of signups divided by the number of visitors to the site, and that would give you a sense of how well your site is performing. And then you've got your target, an actual number that you can be measuring against to see if you're achieving it. And again, having these goals up front allows you sort of in the testing phase to see how well you're doing. Otherwise, you're just throwing content up there and you're not really looking at it to see how well it's performing. So setting goals is kind of a critical step in the conversion process. And again, there are all types of goals that we can have if we think about, a lot of what we're talking about, we're not selling stuff here. We're not a commercial outlet. We're talking about engagement primarily for our audiences. How do we engage them in different things? So we can kind of think about engagement in these 4 kind of categories of simple things, clickstream stuff. How many people went to the site? How many people clicked through? How many people, how long on the page did they stay? Those are sort of basic things. And then we can look at interaction. Did they do anything once they got there? Did we give them opportunities to download a white paper or sign up for a newsletter or subscribe to our RSS feed? What did they do on the page? That's another level of interaction that we can measure. Intimacy is, as we get into social media, what are people saying about us? What's the general feeling about the organization? Is it positive? Is it negative? And then finally, is the highest level is influence. How are we as a brand? How are we understood, and what's our reputation as a brand? And so these are things that we can be looking at online on the web and measuring as part of our conversion. So, the next step, once we have our audience and our goals, and we've thought about what we want to measure, the next thing is we have to come up with a site that sort of addresses those things. So, this is very much sort of along the lines of the scientific method. You're making a guess. You've got some data. You're going to make a guess at what you think it's going to, how you want to address it, how we can present this to folks in a meaningful way. So we come up with some basic ideas. I just threw this out here as like sort of a general best practices for layout, from research and things like that. So, when people go to sites, they like to see, this stands for what's in it for me kind of headline. So why am I, I'm here for something. Are they going to meet what my need is? And then some supporting copy to go along with that compelling image. People like to see benefits up top. They want to see an opportunity for engagement too. So these are things that you want to get sort of at the top level of your page. And there's sort of more supportive things. Comments and testimonials are really important. Showing people that other people that have engaged with you have had a good experience, and sort of reiterating that. This is sort of a general model for how pages ought to be laid out. Now, if we look at something like, I'm using our Japan earthquake page here, just as an example, making sure that it's relevant, that we've got a headline that makes sense to people when they come to the site. Again, people who would have gotten to this site would have gone to like Japan anniversary, so they're looking for information about the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear crisis, so we want to spell that out for them so that they know that they've gotten to the right place. We want to put our calls to action or our opportunities for engagement high up on the page, because this is where they're going to look. We want to have it down here or kind of buried in here. It needs to stand out because this is the thing that we really want them to do. And again, it's just sort of reiterating keywords and giving, making sure our logos are consistent and opportunities for other levels of engagement. So these are all things that we need to incorporate into the designs of our sites. Another important thing that we need to be thinking about is, this is one of the persuasion factors that we think about. And people are like, they're like beagles. When they come to a site, they want to see consistency in the scent that they're, as they're going through the funnel. They want to see pages that make sense to them and are logically linked. And we do that most of the time through design. If the pages look like they belong together, then people feel comfortable moving forward. If they come to a site that looks totally different from the page that they were just on, they're going to stop and wonder where they are and why they're there. And is this the same thing that I was just looking at? And so again, it's a subtle thing, but through words, graphics, our branding, the location of elements, all that stuff helps reinforce a positive experience for folks when they're on the site. So that's sort of design in a nutshell. So once we get into design, the next thing, and again, this is the thing that's really important that we folks hardly ever do, is testing. So we talk a lot about testing. Everyone's big into testing and being data-driven and all that stuff, but usually it doesn't work out that way, right? So again, it's sort of this method of this always be testing kind of mentality where we're planning. We've done our upfront planning. We're going to put our stuff out there. We're going to measure the results, and then we're willing to make changes to that. We're going to evolve it. We're going to to improve what we've got, and we're just going to keep going through this cycle because we want our pages to perform well. It's not enough to just put content out there and let it sit, particularly if it's important, and again, if there's some sort of call to action or engagement opportunity along with it. So again, this is sort of a quick step through the process. It's good to name your tests so everybody knows what you're talking about. We're going to update the Japanese tsunami site. We'll call it Japanese tsunami site. Again, defining your goals. Talk about tactics. What are you going to do differently to meet your goals? Figure out what your control page is. You've got a page that's already out there. You might want to create 2 variations of it to test. Test it, measure, analyze, and then go through the whole thing again. So again, it starts off with your goal framework, looking at your goals. And then you know, looking at your pages, putting them out there. And there are two types of tests that you can do. There's A/B testing, and then there's multivariate testing. So multivariate testing takes a page and it looks at every element of it. So there's headlines, there's graphics, it could be a little call to action, it could be, you know, it could be any number of things, but it's sort of the elements on the page. It's very expensive and it's very time consuming to do multivariate testing. It just takes a lot longer to do because you're testing every little element. A better and simpler way and more economical and probably more reasonable given most people's resources is A/B testing. So A/B testing is essentially you're creating two variations of your page. Maybe you're switching out some of the elements, you know, to give it some variation. You're gonna load both of those up on the web. People are gonna go to both of those pages. They'll sort of be divided up equally, and you're gonna look at how each one is performing. It's pretty straightforward. So, you know, and then you can see over a period of time. You say, give it a month, which page is returning more value to us, and it's that straightforward. So, you know, if we were, you know, things that you would want to test are, you know, call to actions, headlines, descriptions, the layout of the page. Maybe one layout would work better than another. Maybe the placement of a heading, placement of a graphic would be better. And you just compare them side to side. So, you know, maybe you want to, you know, for this one, you know, we've got smaller videos here, heading up here. You know, we've got a big video here. Maybe that's a better approach. Those are the things that we could be testing and coming up with those variations. And just doing it in a way, you know, obviously, the problem with any kind of testing is it takes more time because you've got to create multiple pages to do it. But again, if it's something critical, something that we really want to be measuring, or something that we want to learn from, it's probably worth doing every now and then. And again, you can do this through Google Optimizer. It's already sort of built into the Google platform, so it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so we're almost done here. So I've got my 999 plan here. This is 9 things for converting websites. So, you know, that they communicate value. Again, value is a key thing that we're looking at. We always find opportunities for engagement, whatever they may be. Find ways for people to interact with us, download our content, whatever it might be. Have design consistency through our pages. Again, people want to see how the pages are related to each other. That makes them feel good, makes them feel more comfortable with engaging with us. You know, we want to look at all the personas when we're designing pages and thinking about content for pages, that we're not just thinking about one particular persona, but all the personas. How do we address all of their needs and come up with ways of doing that? You know, get comments. You know, anytime we can get people involved to comment back on articles or give us feedback, that's good. You know, make sure, again, through our design and through our site architectures that we're not taking people off in crazy directions and looping them back, because once they're off the page, they're gone. You know, we always want to be testing. We want to be data-driven. We want to be looking at that data to make our decisions about what we should be doing and not just sort of what we think we ought to be doing, and just sort of use general communication persuasive principles when we're communicating on the web. So again, SEO, conversion, they're all part of an integrated web strategy. It's kind of like, you know, SEO is almost like, I think of it like, it's like spell checking your content. It's just something that you ought to do anyway, because it's simple to do. It's not time consuming. You can do it at the beginning of a program. You can watch it and see if you need to change it. That's fine. But it's just kind of one of those due diligence things. And same with designing our sites. We ought to be try to be as empathic as we can. Think about who we're designing for. Keep that in mind when we're creating content and layout for our sites. So again, it really comes down again to these 3 things: relevance, communicating our relevance to people, value, and engagement. Again, you know, people come to our pages, they're expecting to get something, they're expecting to find what they were looking for on our pages. By doing good search engine optimization, we sort of ensure that we're meeting their intent, that we're giving them the thing that they're looking for, they're finding value in it, and then hopefully at the end that they want to have some sort of engagement with us. So that is all there is to say about search engine optimization and conversion in 1 hour and 5 minutes. So any questions? Thank you. Questions, comments?
Yeah, on the whole, engagement, relevant, value, and all that, is that really calculated page by page, or does content that EDU kind of get aggregated together, and then you have one section of it gets a lot of response and engagement? Does that make everybody, or is it really
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, if it's a page within our gottech.edu structure, it helps, yeah. I mean, and again, this sort of goes back to that question of long tail. You know, we can look at all of our pages together help raise, helps raise Georgia Tech, right? But again, the thing that we need to be looking at is sort of the individual areas that people are looking for. So if you've got some nuanced or some specific admissions page that you're looking at, you know, by optimizing that, you know, obviously that's going to help rise in rank, and then it'll help all of the site raise in rank. So.
Which skill set do you think is best for coming up with all the keywords and the navigation words, the search words? Do you think it'd be like the writer who's writing the content, or should it be somebody who can step away from it? Right now, I'm not sure
who's doing that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, again, I think, you know, with a lot of the SEO and even the conversion stuff, it does start, you know, I think it does start with the writer, the person that's writing the content. You know, coming from a design perspective, there's a lot that design brings into that equation as well. So I think they need to complement each other, certainly. Anybody can do keyword research. I mean, anyone can, it's a brainstorming process, so the more people you get involved in it to think about it, the better it's going to be. But I think, you know, it does sort of fall into, you know, as people are writing about the topic, they're the ones that have sort of done the investigating and asked all the questions and done the interviews. I mean, they would sort of have firsthand knowledge of language that people are using and how that would be, you know, what people might be searching for. So, but again, I think they're complementary things. The design part complements the writing part, and they can both help each other out. Oh, I see that hand way back there behind Elise.
Paid media count towards link building, so like banner advertising?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Paid media, does that count towards link building? Like if you have banner
Like
advertising?
PPC, like if you have a PPC campaign?
CPM running on like US News.
Right,
Business
that's a good question. If it's bringing traffic to your site, it should.
Or if it gets redirected through like an ad server, then
Right.
it's not seen as a credible source anymore.
That's a good question. I don't know. I would think it would if it goes directly. You know, if you've got an ad on Google and people are clicking on it, again, that's showing relevance of the ad certainly. And if it's linking to your page, then it would show relevance to that. So I would think it would add to your search ranking.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but that's a good question. I'm not 100% on that.
How much do these URL shortening services affect the ranking? Like if you have your own Twitter account and you're using the URL shortening instead of a link directly to your own site, does that hurt you?
Does it hurt you if you use URL shortening devices? Does it hurt you? I don't think it does. I think it's still directing to your site. So having the URL, just because the URL is different, it's still a link back to your site. So I think it's showing traffic and it's showing relevance. So I think it's valuable. But that's a good question as well. There are a lot of sort of nuanced stuff that, you know, it's hard to tell. Again, because so much of the search engine criteria is unknown. They only tell you so much about what they weigh and what they don't weigh because they don't want people to, again, game the system.
One last question, sorry. How did you count your inbound links? Did you use Google Analytics? You had the page.
Oh yeah, I use a tool called Ranks NL.
Ranks.
Yeah, it's Ranks space NL, and that's actually a really good tool. It's a free. I think they have free aspects of it are free. Some of it you have to pay for, but it'll do keywords for you. It'll do it'll kind of look through your site and tell you inbound links and who's linking to you, things like that. So it's a really good tool.
Could you repeat that so we could hear it here?
Yeah, it's Ranks NL.
NL.
Yeah, and I think there's a free component to it and there's a paid component to it, but the free tools are really useful. Yep. Margaret?
I use Bing.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm the only person in the world who does, but where do other search engines fit into this?
Yeah, I mean, Yahoo, Bing, Google, I mean, those are the big search engines right now. And they all use similar, you know, they all have their own search engines that they've obviously constructed. They're all doing the same thing. They're all, for them, again, you know, the business model for search engines is the more people that go to them, the more advertising money they can make. The reason people go to them is because they're finding what they want through search. So it's for them, it's how do we make people find stuff better on search? And it goes back to always improving the relevance and making sure that the searches are relevant. So they're all doing the same thing. They're all sort of working toward the same end there. And all of these things work for Bing or Yahoo. They're all related. Yeah.
I'm just curious if you guys are working with anybody outside, or if you're doing SEO entirely within this team, and then what percentage of your time are you guys spending on it?
We haven't done a whole lot of it. I think maybe in the past, I don't know if Jeff was doing much of this.
Very minimal.
I could see some of the sites that I pulled up looked like they were looked like somebody had been sort of conscientiously going through them and doing some SEO. So I think maybe folks prior to my arrival have been doing it, and it's kind of a hit or miss thing. You know, not every project gets it. It's something that we ought to be thinking about and just need to work into our workflow more. How much time do we spend doing it? Again, I couldn't tell you because we haven't been doing it a whole lot. But it's an important thing at the when we're initiating a project that we work this into our work processes, and we've talked about doing that. So as we start to get rolling here, I've only been here a few months, but as we get rolling, we'll definitely make an effort to do that. Yeah.
So I think one of the struggles is the keyword identification piece.
Mhm.
And I know you mentioned brainstorming with the people in the group.
Right.
One of the challenges that comes with that, of course, is you get a bunch of people in the room who talk about things in a certain way, and that's the way they think about things.
Right.
So outside of Google AdWords, do you have any tips or tools that you can kind of point to say, I understand that everybody here uses NRC,
Right.
but nobody knows what that means,
Yeah.
and here's really how they're searching?
Well,
or-
I think the AdWords is a good way to show them. You can plug in NRC, and you'll be able to pull up a screen that says 5 people have done a search for NRC, and then you can type in Nanotechnology Research Center and say, 600,033 people look for this, So I think we can use the data to make our point and to make our arguments for this stuff. And it's in their benefit. There's no reason why, somebody shouldn't do it. And I think, we just need to show them. You're like, that's never going to work. They'll never go for that. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
Could you recommend an online resource such as SEO blog source?
Yeah, there's a company called SEO Moz is a good one. There's what is it? There's Searchland, I think, is another big blog site dedicated to search. Mashable has a lot of stuff on search. There's a group called Market Motive, which is an excellent group. It's actually they have an online course, and they go through everything from email marketing to conversion to SEO to online PR, which is also a very good reference site to go to. And that one's called Market Motive. So yeah, there are any number of them out there. Anyone else? Well, all right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time.